But that was not the end of the tale. Korgath's voice grew heavier still. 4 seasons later, when the Brothers Tok returned from the summer raids, the spirit fire dimmed, as if the flames themselves dreaded what came next. They found their family compound burning, the homes where their children played, where their mates kept hearth, where their parents had blessed them with wisdom, all ash, and among the ruins. Korgath paused, tracing another protective sign. Among the ruins lay their families, slain by Maldor's hand. The initiates sat in horrified silence. But even this cruelty wasn't enough for the Gravewalker. As the brothers mourned, the ground began to stir. Their dead, their own dead, rose with that same unholy light in their eyes. Maldor had not just killed their families, he had consumed their very spirits, leaving only empty shells animated by his foul magic. Their loved ones weren't just dead. They were gone, forever denied their place in the eternal hunting grounds. Korgath's voice trembled with rage. To see their mates, their children, their parents, walking as soulless puppets, knowing their spirits had been devoured by that monster. He gripped his glaive until his knuckles turned pale. It was then that the Brothers Tok swore a blood oath stronger than any in our history. They would hunt Maldor to the ends of the earth, not just for vengeance, but to ensure no other family would suffer such a fate. For decades they pursued him, Korgath continued, his voice growing distant. Just the 4 brothers, bound by blood and vengeance. They tracked him through frozen wastes and burning deserts, across storm-racked seas, and into the darkest places. Wartok's strength, Thutok's tracking, Mogtok's storms, and Gar'Tok's wisdom, all bent toward a single purpose. Each time they found one of his lairs, they would arrive just too late. They would find only destruction. Villages emptied, graveyards desecrated, ancient tombs broken open. And always, waiting for them, would be Maldor's undead servants, left behind to slow their pursuit while he fled to his next refuge. The many winters turned their beards gray, a fate no orc warrior wishes for. But the Brothers Tok did not care about glory anymore. They cared only for justice, for vengeance, for ensuring no other family would suffer as theirs had. Finally, the Shadowspine Mountains, Thutok's lifetime of tracking led them to a ruined human keep. Its once proud walls were now stained black with dark magic, its courtyards filled with unnatural mists. Here, they knew, they would find Maldor at last. In the cold dawn, Korgath continued, his voice low and measured, the Brothers Tok stood before the ruined keep. Its towers, once proud markers of human nobility, now seemed to claw at the gray sky like grasping skeletal fingers. Black ice coated the fallen stones, and unnatural mists curled around the walls like hungry spirits. Thutok read the signs in the corrupted earth. No animals had passed here for months. No birds nested in those cursed towers. Even the rats had fled what this place had become. Gar'Tok tested the weight of his worn axe, the same blade that had struck down countless undead over their long hunt. Magtok's weather-beaten face turned skyward, sensing how Maldor's power had tainted even the winds themselves. And Gar'Tok? Korgath's remaining eye grew distant. The eldest brother clutched the totems of their ancestors, feeling how they trembled in the presence of such darkness. Each bone and carved stone had grown colder with every step toward this place. The brothers shared a look then, one that spoke of decades of pursuit, of battles fought side by side, of vengeance long denied. No words were needed. They had tracked Maldor across the world, and now, gray-bearded and battle-scarred, they would end what began on that terrible day when they returned to find their family's spirits consumed. As they approached the keep's shattered gates, the mists parted to reveal dozens of Maldor's undead servants waiting in the courtyard. The time for stealth was past. Their final battle began the moment they crossed the threshold, Korgath continued, his voice heavy with memory. The first wave of undead struck like a tide of rotting flesh. Gar'Tok raised his ritual totems, but Maldor had prepared for this. A bolt of corrupt magic struck the eldest brother, shattering his defenses and sending him crashing against the keep's walls. His legs shattered, his power momentarily broken. Gar'Tok roared at seeing his eldest brother fall. His mighty axe carved through the dead, each swing ending 3 or 4 at once. He fought as he had taught so many others, each movement flowing into the next, never wasting a single strike. "Stay back," he called to Gar'Tok, who struggled to rise. "We'll handle this, brother." Gar'Tok scaled the keep's walls like a shadow, his arrows finding their marks with deadly precision. Each shot struck where a heart should beat, each arrow blessed to disrupt Maldor's magic. From his vantage point, he could see more undead emerging from the keep's depths. "There are hundreds," he called down. "He's been preparing for us." Gar'Tok's storms answered, lightning splitting the gray sky. Thunder shook the ancient stones as he called upon decades of knowledge, weaving weather and war magic into devastating combinations. The rain he summoned sizzled where it touched the undead flesh, his power turned to purifying force. But Gar'Tok, Kor'gath's voice cracked slightly. Gar'Tok could only watch, propped against the wall, as his brothers fought their last battle, as Wartok's mighty swings began to slow, as Thutok's arrows grew fewer, as Gar'Tok's storms weakened. Wartok fell first. He had carved a ring of destruction around himself, but they kept coming. A spear took him in the shoulder, then another in the leg. Still he fought, his axe rising and falling like a butcher's cleaver. "Remember the forms, brothers!" he roared, even as they dragged him down. His last act was to throw his cherished axe to Gar'Tok's feet. "You'll need this, eldest brother." Thutok's arrows had decimated their numbers, but they learned. They began using their own dead as shields, advancing behind walls of corpses. When they finally reached his perch, he drew his twin daggers. Just like hunting cave bears, he called down to his brothers, managing one last laugh before the dead overwhelmed him. Gar'Tok's end shook the very mountains. He saw his brothers fall and channeled every last bit of his power into one final storm. "The spirits of storm and sky reject you, Gravewalker." His lightning struck his foes, purifying all it touched. The thunder of his last spell still echoes in those peaks, they say. But when the lightning ceased, when the rain turned to steam, Gar'Tok stood alone against too many. He fell facing Maldor, cursing him with his last breath. And Gar'Tok, Kor'gath's remaining eye gleamed with unshed tears. Gar'Tok watched it all, unable to reach them, unable to fight beside them. But in that moment of deepest despair, as Maldor approached for the kill, something extraordinary happened. The spirits of Gar'Tok's fallen brothers, freely given, not stolen, surged through him. Wartok's strength flowed through his broken body. Thutok's accuracy guided his hands. Gar'Tok's storms coursed through his blood. As Maldor approached, sneering at the crippled shaman, Gar'Tok felt something stir within him. Wartok's axe, lying at his feet, began to hum with power. The rain from Gar'Tok's final storm gathered around him like a cloak. The shadows themselves seemed to bend as Thutok's hunting spirit moved through him. "Poor Gar'Tok," Maldor's voice was like grave dirt shifting. "Forced to watch your brothers die, just as you watched your family rise. But don't worry, you'll serve me better than they did." Gar'Tok's hand closed around Wartok's axe. The weapon that had trained countless warriors, that had struck down hundreds of undead, seemed to pulse with his brother's remaining strength. "You understand nothing of service, Gravewalker," Gar'Tok's voice echoed with 3 others. "Nothing of brotherhood." He rose, his shattered legs suddenly strong with Wartok's power. His hands, guided by Thutok's deadly precision, spun the axe in patterns even the youngest brother had never achieved. The storm winds, Gar'Tok's final gift, whirled around him, clearing the courtyard of mist. Maldor's sneer faltered. For the first time in decades, the monster knew fear. Before him stood not one opponent, but 4. In Gar'Tok's eyes burned the combined will of the Brothers Tok. The axe in his hands glowed with power freely given, not stolen. The very stones of the keep groaned as the spirits of his brothers manifested around him. The battle that followed was like nothing even I can properly describe, Kor'gath said, his voice hushed. Gar'Tok moved with Wartok's perfect form, struck with Thutok's precision, his blows carried by Gar'Tok's winds. Where Maldor commanded the dead with stolen power, Gar'Tok wielded the freely given strength of the greatest brotherhood our tribe had ever known. When the final blow fell, They say Maldor's body burst like a rotten corpse, releasing all the spirits he had consumed over the decades. The spirits of Gar'Tok's mate and son. The souls of the brothers' families, finally freed, lingered just long enough to embrace their avenger before passing on to the eternal hunting grounds. As dawn broke over the keep's ruined walls, a strange mist began to roll down from the mountains. Not Maldor's corrupt fog, but something pure and wild. Those who found the battlefield later said they saw 4 figures walking into that mist. 4 brothers together again, young and strong as they had been before their hunt began. Some say they still walk the eternal hunting grounds together. Kor'gath's voice grew soft. Others claim they guard the boundaries between life and death, ensuring no one ever again breaks the sacred laws as Maldor did. But all agree that in that final battle, Gar'Tok proved that freely given power, born of brotherhood and love, will always overcome what is stolen through treachery and hate. The Brothers Tok had their vengeance, but more importantly, they kept their honor. They died as they lived, together, protecting others from a fate worse than death. And that, young warriors, Kor'gath rose, his glaive catching the last light of the spirit fire, is why we tell their tale, not just to warn of darkness, but to remind us that true strength lies in brotherhood, in honor, in standing together against the darkness no matter the cost. The spirit fire dimmed as Kor'gath's tale came to an end. The initiates sat in reverent silence, each lost in thoughts of brotherhood and sacrifice. The old shaman's eye fell once more on young Keth. "Come here, boy," he said softly. When Keth approached, Kor'gath spoke in a voice meant only for him. "I was barely your age when I last saw Gar'Tok, you know. Standing there in the dawn light, gray-bearded but unbowed. Something in your eyes reminds me of him, that same quiet wisdom." The other initiates began to stir, but froze when a strange sound drifted through the cave, like distant laughter carried on the wind. Some would later swear they saw 4 shadows move across the cave wall, brothers walking together into legend. But Keth saw something else in the old shaman's remaining eye. A glimmer of tears quickly blinked away, the tears of a boy who had watched heroes walk into legend and lived to tell their tale.